Good morning, everyone. Today your topic is musculoskeletal system. In this, bone, joints, and soft tissues are included. So, coming to the first topic, bone will be dealt in 3 to 4 classes, and later the joints and soft tissues will be dealt. So, bone is the first topic to be dealt. So, coming to the bone composition, bone it's an extracellular matrix composed of both the organic and the inorganic components. Organic component is mostly composed of osteoid, and this osteoid is in return it's composed mostly of type 1 collagen and few small amounts of glycosaminoglycans and small amounts of proteins. So collagen is the most important component of the osteoid, and this collagen is the one which provides the structural support to the bone. And the inorganic component is provided by the calcium hydroxyapatite. This is the mineral component. This forms the inorganic component of the bone, and this is the one which is continuously in a remodeling process in the bone composition. So organic and inorganic component. Organic component is formed by the osteoid. Osteoid is mainly composed of collagen, and other than the collagen, glycosaminoglycans and other small proteins are also present. Inorganic component is a mineral component formed by the calcium hydroxyapatite. And coming to the development of a bone, I'm not going into the detail of the development of bone. I'm just giving a brief. There are 2 types of developments of bone. Enchondral ossification and the intramembranous ossification. Coming to the enchondral ossification, this is seen in long bones, whereas the intramembranous ossification is seen in the flat bones. So enchondral ossification, this is derived from the mesenchymal precursors which give rise to the cartilage. So chondral means cartilage. The bone which is derived from the cartilage, it's called enchondral ossification. Whichever the ossification, the primary cell is the mesenchymal precursor. The mesenchymal precursor gives rise to the cartilage. Cartilage, then it develops in the later stages, it develops the primary and secondary centers of ossification and develops into a long bone. This is the enchondral ossification. Next is the intramembranous ossification. This is seen in flat bones. So in here what happens is this the primary cell is the mesenchymal precursor, but the later cell it's not the cartilage. Later the mesenchymal precursor do not develop into the cartilage, it develops into a fibrous cell. So a fibrocyte or a fibrous cell is the one which gives rise to a bone. And this is called the intramembranous ossification, seen in flat bones like cranial bones, pelvis bones, etc. So the 2 types of developments are enchondral ossification and intramembranous ossification. Enchondral ossification is seen in long bones. The bone here develops from the cartilage, whereas the intramembranous ossification is seen in flat bones. Here the bone is developed from the fibrous cell. And there are 2 types of bones. One is the cortical bone and the next one is the trabecular bone. Coming to the cortical bone, this forms the cortex. So this is the cortex of the bone, and this is the medullary cavity in which the hematopoietic system is present. Here, hematopoietic system or the marrow cavity is present. Here the cortex is the rigid part, and this is the strongest part of the bone, whereas the medullary part is the medulla or a marrow cavity is a bit spongy. So coming to the cortical bone, in histology, how it looks. There is a complete Haversian system in which there is a central blood vessel surrounded by the osteocytes. The blood vessels are surrounding in the osteocytes, and this provides the structural support. These are tightly, compactly arranged, and this provides the structural support to the cortical bone. Whereas in the trabecular bone, which forms the marrow cavity, the trabecular bone, in this there is haphazard arrangement of osteocytes and osteoblasts, and there is osteoclasts at the margins of the bone. Here you can see the osteoclasts at the margins of the bone. This is the trabecular bone. These are the 2 types of bone in a 2 types of bone. The cortical bone forms the cortex, whereas the trabecular bone forms the marrow cavity. What are the cells which are present in the bone? So whatever the organic component or the mineral component which is present, it has to be derived from some of the other cells. So what are the cells which are present? The three most important cells are the osteoblasts, osteocytes, osteoclasts. So what are osteoblasts? Osteoblasts are unicellular, uninucleate cells. These are the ones which are responsible for the osteoblastic activity. That is, these are the ones which form the osteoid. Osteoid, as I said, the osteoid is the one which provides structural support to this bone. And this osteoid, the most important protein which is present in the osteoid, which is very unique to the bone, is osteocalcin or osteopontin. So osteoblasts are the one, they are responsible for the osteoblastic activity of the bone. They form the osteoid. Whereas next is the osteocytes. Osteocytes are the one, these osteoblasts later when they form the bone, they transform into osteocyte and they get embedded with the bone matrix. So osteoblasts are the one, osteoblasts, they transform into osteocyte and get embedded in the bone matrix during the remodeling process. So osteoblasts and osteocytes are the same ones, but in a different, but they have a different function. Osteoclasts are the most important one. These are multinucleated cells containing almost 20 to 50 nuclei with common cytoplasm, and these are the ones which are important for the resorption activity, that is bone degradation activity. Why there should be bone resorption and bone formation? As we see the bone looks static, but there is continuous bone formation and bone resorption in the bone. There is continuous activity of the osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Why? Because there should be continuous remodeling process, and just like the skin, the upper superficial layers are desquamated as and when. In the same manner, in the bone also, there should be osteoclastic activity and osteoblastic activity, which should be balanced, and this results in a healthy bone. So this is very important for a healthy bone. So there is continuous osteoblastic and osteoclastic activity. There is continuous remodeling process which occurs in the bone, due to which there is continuous formation of bone, continuous resorption of bone, and a balance is maintained between the two. So the most important cells in the bone are osteoblasts and osteoclasts, which are responsible for the osteoid formation and which are responsible for the osteoid resorption respectively. Now coming to we have discussed everything about the normal structure and normal function of the bone. And coming to the diseases, pathological aspects of the bone. The diseases of the bone are divided into 4 categories. First one is the defects in the transcription factors, defects in the hormones and signal transduction proteins, defects in the extracellular proteins, defects in the metabolic enzymes and the transporters. Coming to the defects in the transcription factors. There are 2 conditions. One is the brachydactyly and the second one is the cleidocranial dysplasia. These are the 2 conditions which are discussed in the defects in the transcription factors. So the first one, brachydactyly. Brachydactyly is a condition. This is due to the mutation in the homeobox proteins. So there are certain proteins, homeobox proteins, which regulate our normal homeostasis of our body. So whatever proteins which are synthesized in our body, they are under the regulation of homeobox proteins. So whenever there is a mutation involving the homeobox proteins, the mesenchyme is the one which develops into the bone. So there is disorganized mesenchyme which occurs, due to which there is defective cartilage and defective bone formation. Due to which, in the brachydactyly patients, dactyly is fingers. So brachydactyly patients, we can observe the shortening of the phalanges of the thumb and the great toe. So in brachydactyly, the thumb and the great toe are involved. What happened into the thumb and the great toe? They are shortened because of the shortening of the phalanges. Why this has happened? This has happened uh, uh, due to the transcription factor mutation, which is homeobox proteins. And second one is the cleidocranial dysplasia. This is also a genetic defect due to which there is normally the cranial sutures at the time of birth they are patent, but after 6 to 7 months, by the age of 1 year, they get closed, and all the fontanelle also get closed. But in cleidocranial dysplasia, what happens is there is no closure of the cranial sutures or the delayed closure of the cranial sutures, and the fontanelle are also patent. And other than this, there is imperfect dentures. The dentures are not proper. This is all which occurs in the cleidocranial dysplasia. The cranial sutures are not closed. There is the patent, the fontanelle are maintained patent, and there is imperfect dentures. And next one is the next condition is the defects in hormones and signal transduction proteins. In this, achondroplasia is the most important condition. You may have seen achondroplasia patients, but you don't know the medical term. You might have seen the dwarf people in movies, and normally also we can see the very dwarf people who are only 3 feet 3 feet in height. These are all achondroplasia patients. This is also a genetic mutation. This occurs due to the defect in some signal transduction proteins like fibroblast growth factor receptors and fibroblast growth factors. These are mutated in achondroplasia patients. What happened? What happens? These patients have normal trunk, a big sized head, but the extremities they are very small. That is, there is shortening of the extremities, but the trunk and the head are maintained at a proper size, but the extremities are shortened, due to which they look very abnormal. And coming to the longevity, IQ levels, and the reproductive status, they are maintained very normal. They can give birth to children. They can work in places where we work, but a social stigma will be present. Seeing a dwarf people, that has to be avoided by everyone. So achondroplasia, you have to remember dwarf people. And next one is the defects in extracellular proteins. In this, the example is osteogenesis imperfecta. So osteogenesis imperfecta, other name is brittle bone disease. This can be autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive. In the osteogenesis imperfecta, it's again categorized into 4 subtypes. And some subtypes are autosomal dominant and some subtypes are autosomal recessive. And other thing is, this osteogenesis imperfecta patients, some are compatible with life, some subtypes are compatible with life, and some subtypes they are not compatible with life. They are very lethal. This condition is very lethal in them. And what is the defect? There is defective osteoblast, due to which there is defective type 1 collagen formation. There is a mutation involving the alpha 1 and alpha 2 chains of the type 1 collagen. As I said earlier, type 1 collagen is the most important component of the bone, due to which the structural stability is maintained. Usually collagen is the one which is present in the triple helix model. But here in osteogenesis imperfecta, due to the mutations involving the alpha 1 and alpha 2 type chains, what happens is the collagen, the triple helix of the collagen is not maintained. They are arranged in a random or a haphazard manner, due to which the structural stability is not provided by the collagen. So the bones are very fragile. The collagen is the one which forms the osteoid. As the collagen is deficient and it's defective, the osteoid is not properly formed. So it's a very too little bone it's formed. So the bones are very fragile and they are very liable to multiple fractures. Even for a small trivial injury also, these patients get fractured. Normally when we play, when we just slip, our bones do not fracture because of the intact collagen which is present. But in osteogenesis imperfecta patients, because of the defective collagen, which is the main component of the osteoid, there is defective osteoid too because of the defective collagen. And the bone activity is very low and leads to multiple fractures. Bone being very fragile leads to multiple fractures. This osteogenesis imperfecta can be seen even at birth. At the time of birth only they might have noticed this. Then it's called osteogenesis imperfecta congenita. Other than the bones, this collagen is a part of many other organs also, like sclera, eyes, joints, ligaments, teeth and skin. So due to which, other than the bones, there are extraskeletal manifestations in osteogenesis imperfecta. That is blue and translucent sclera, due to which the choroid can be easily visualized. Usually the choroid is not visualized because the sclera is not translucent. But in osteogenesis imperfecta patients, there is translucency of the sclera due to which the choroid is visualized. There is a defect involving the middle and inner ear and also sensory neural hearing loss, due to which there is hearing loss in patients because of the middle and inner ear involvement and nerve involvement also. There is hearing loss is involved. And as the teeth are also involved, there is imperfect dentures which can be seen in osteogenesis imperfecta. So these are the various manifestations. And there may be, because of the collagen, there may be laxity of the joints and ligaments and the skin. And next is the defects in the metabolic enzymes and the transporters. In this, there is a condition called osteopetrosis. The other name for osteopetrosis is marble bone disease. So as I said, osteogenesis imperfecta is a defect of the osteoblast. Here, osteopetrosis, which is a marble bone disease, this is a defect of the osteoclast. So this is also the same. It can be both autosomal dominant or a recessive disorder. In this, unlike the osteogenesis imperfecta in which osteoblastic activity is defective, here the defect lies in osteoclastic activity. Because of the decreased osteoclastic activity, there is decreased bone resorption. So the bone resorption is decreased and there is diffuse skeletal sclerosis. The bone resorption is decreased, but there is continuous bone formation by the osteoblast, but the bone is not properly formed because there is no remodeling, continuous remodeling. A healthy bone is formed whenever there is a continuous bone resorption and a continuous bone deposition. A remodeling process has to be there for a healthy bone. But here what is happening? Only the bone is deposited, but there is no bone resorption, due to which the bone becomes sclerosed. So there is here too much osteoid is present, too much bone is present. Whereas in osteogenesis imperfecta, very little bone is present. Here too much bone is present. Even though there is bone, but this bone is very weak because of the sclerosis. And this bone is susceptible to fractures just like the osteogenesis imperfecta. Osteopetrosis implies a stone-like bone, but here it's not stone. It is sclerosed and very weak. And it gives rise to multiple fractures. And there are two forms in osteopetrosis. One is the infantile form and the next one is the adult form. Infantile form forms the severe variety, whereas the adult form is the milder variety. In the infantile form, apart from the bone is sclerosed, apart from this, the marrow cavity is also obliterated, due to which the hematopoiesis do not occur in a proper way. So these patients, the infantile form patients, they present with anemia, neutropenia, thrombocytopenia, and as the marrow is not active, there is extramedullary hematopoiesis in liver, spleen, etc. And there is hepatosplenomegaly which occurs due to this. So the hematopoietic activity of the marrow is deficient due to the defective bone formation, resulting in anemia, neutropenia, thrombocytopenia. And because of the extramedullary hematopoiesis, there is hepatosplenomegaly. And other than this, there is also hydrocephalus, neurological involvement, optic atrophy, and blindness, which may also occur in infantile form. Coming to the adult form, they usually present with multiple repeated fractures because of the weaker bones, and sometimes they may have cranial nerve deficits and anemia. But it's a milder form compared to the infantile form. The disease is not severe. The severity is more in the number of fractures, but usually the other manifestations, extraskeletal manifestations, are little compared to the infantile form. Next one is the defect in the enzymes. In this, the condition mucopolysaccharidosis is included. This mucopolysaccharidosis is also dealt in lysosomal storage disorders. You might have forgotten it. So this is due to the enzyme deficiency defect in lysosomal acid hydrolysis. Acid hydrolysis are the one which degrade the dermatan sulfate, heparin sulfate, and keratin sulfate. These are the glycosaminoglycans which are present in the throughout the body, and these hydrolyses which are the one which degrade it. And there is defective degradation of these proteins, due to which these proteins get accumulated everywhere in the body, everywhere in the skin, other tissues, bone, etc. Because of which there is weakening of the bones, and they look very, the features of the persons are also very coarse and shabby. And next one is the osteoporosis. Here there is a decrease in the quantitative bone mass less than 2.5 standard deviation. So porosis means osteo is bone, porosis is holes. So the bone mass is not intact. There are pores in the bone mass. That is, there is decrease in the quantity, and the decrease in the quantity is not qualitative, it's quantitative. So this decreased quantity of the bone mass, if it is less than 2.5 standard deviation, it's called osteoporosis. If it's less and it's maintained between 1 and 2.5 standard deviation, it's called osteopenia. So there are two terms which you should know. One is the osteopenia and next one is the osteoporosis. Osteopenia is the term used when the bone mass is less, but it's maintained between the 1 and 2.5 standard deviation. You know standard deviations in SPM, you might have known about the standard deviation. Usually less than 2.5 is taken as a severe standard deviation. And a decrease in quantitative bone mass less than 2.5 standard deviation, it's called osteoporosis. What happens? Clinically, the patients have very fragile skeleton. They have an increased risk of fractures, and because of the fractures and improper union, they have pain and deformity. The most common vulnerable age which are involved are elderly people, and that too post-menopausal women are most commonly affected. Sometimes they may be very asymptomatic. They may not have so many fractures and all those asymptomatic, or they may present with usual backache. So asymptomatic or a slight backache is the presentation, and sometimes fractures are the presentation. It's divided into two major groups, primary and secondary. Coming to the primary, osteopenia without an underlying disease or medication, it's called primary. If something is occurring without any underlying problem or medication, it's called idiopathic. Primary osteoporosis is the one which is decrease in the bone quantity because of the because there is no because of some other causes other than the underlying disease or medication. It's called primary, and it's again subdivided into two types: idiopathic type and involutional type. Idiopathic type is seen in the younger patients, and involutional type is seen in aging individuals, that too in postmenopausal women most commonly. And in comparison with the involutional type, idiopathic type is not so common. Involutional type is more common. In young patients, osteoporosis, it's not so common compared to the older patients. And what are the risk factors? There may be some genetic factors which may be running in the families due to which there is osteoporosis. Sex, coming to the sex, usually females are more affected than the males. And reduced physical activity is one of the cause for the osteoporosis. Sedentary life, reduced physical activity leads to osteoporosis. Deficiency of sex hormones. Usually after menopause, females are devoid of estrogens, and males after age they are devoid of androgens. So deficiency of sex hormones is the one which leads to osteoporosis. Other than the hormones, combined deficiency of calcitonin and estrogen is also one of the risk factors for the osteoporosis. Hyperparathyroidism, deficiency of vitamin D are also important risk factors for the osteoporosis. And local factors which are important in the remodeling process are also risk factors in the osteoporosis. And coming to the secondary osteoporosis, it's attributed to number of conditions, number of underlying conditions like immobilization, chronic anemia, acromegaly, hepatic disease, hyperparathyroidism, hypogonadism, thyrotoxicosis, starvation, medications such as corticosteroids, continuous corticosteroid therapy, or anticonvulsant therapy, or heparin therapy. All this can lead to secondary osteoporosis. And coming to the morphological features, usually they present as vertebral fractures or femoral leg fractures and wrist fractures. There is enlargement of the in this, if we see a bone with osteoporosis grossly, there is thinning of the cortex and the enlargement of the medullary cavity. The cortex is thinned out and the medullary cavity is expanded. Histologically, the osteoporosis can be active or inactive. Active osteoporosis is defined as a osteoporosis with a greater turnover. That is, in this there is increased bone resorption and increased bone formation too. So the osteoclastic activity is greater, which result in increased bone resorption. So we can histologically see as more resorption active surfaces. Resorption sites we can see. More of resorption sites on the surface of the bone. And increased osteoblastic activity, this is seen as the increased deposition of osteoid, due to which the width of the osteoid remains normal. Because the turnover is maintained or a high turnover stays is maintained. Because of there is a more of bone resorption and more of bone formation. But at the end of the day, the resorption is more, that's why the quantity is increased. But it's a high turnover stage where there is increased activity both the osteoclasts and both the osteoblasts, due to which histologically we can see as increased resorption sites and increased osteoid activity. Osteoid bone is also seen, but the width of the osteoid seams is normal. Inactive osteoporosis is the second variety. It's defined as the low turnover stage. Here the turnover is not maintained. There is increased resorption, decreased resorption and decreased bone formation also. So decreased resorption leads to decreased number of osteoclasts. So decreased number of osteoclasts leading to decreased number of decreased resorption. Decreased osteoblastic activity leads to decreased osteoid formation. So the bone is not formed properly. I mean, bone is deficient in formation and the resorption is also less. So the width of the osteoid seams is reduced, or to be an extent it can be normal. Because it's a low turnover stage. So for active you have to remember high turnover, inactive low turnover. High turnover because there is increased activity of both the osteoclasts and the osteoblasts. Inactive, in the inactive, the turnover is decreased, low turnover. Both the osteoclasts and osteoblasts are in a decreased activity. Thank you. I'll discuss the next topic, continuation topic tomorrow.